Listen to AM 560 The Answer online at 560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, on your Alexa-powered smart speaker, and on TuneIn, iHeart, and on Odyssey. If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Mr. 10%, the big guy, that would be President Biden. He was in Kentucky yesterday, hanging with his buddy Mitch McConnell.
Oh, yeah, new besties, huh?
And took the time out of his day to step to a podium to congratulate himself and Mitch McConnell and those 17 Republicans who voted for his quote-unquote infrastructure bill. He did so in front of the Brent Spence Bridge there in Kentucky with these powerful words.
Traveled over 140 countries around the world. I'll paraphrase the phrase of my own neighborhood. The rest of the countries, the world's not a patch on our genes. If we do what we want to do, we need to do. It's never been a good bet.
Yeah.
And then he gets loud at the end. What does that mean? Can I have a translation, please?
The world isn't even a patch on our genes if we do what we want to do and need to do. You know, I think President Biden should take the country on a visit to this fictional neighborhood in which he allegedly grew up.
With Corn Pop as his neighbor.
Love to meet Corn Pop. Right.
Love to meet Corn Pop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Does Corn Pop even exist? Did anybody actually try to find Corn Pop?
Can we talk to some of his fellow students in law school?
Oh, that's right. He was one in his class.
At the historically black college he taught at, allegedly. I mean, the lists of fabrications from this guy is endless, but as well as aphorisms like that. The old neighborhood aphorism, if America does what it needs to do, the world isn't but a patch on our genes. Powerful rhetoric. For more on Bidenomics and other topics, we're pleased to be joined by John Tamny for our first conversation with John in this new year. John is RealClearMarkets.com. He is FreedomWorks. He is the author of the book, The Money Confusion, How Illiteracy About Currencies and Inflation Sets the Stage for the Crypto Revolution. John, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, what a resume that is.
Yeah, it's very impressive. It's almost as impressive as the president's. I know you're a free market kind of guy, but the infrastructure bill and infrastructure in general, which is a favorite a pot of money to create and from which to spend for politicians. It's our public goods, John. We got to build those roads and bridges like Biden and McConnell and those Republicans in the Senate are doing. So kudos to them, right?
Well, all government spending is a tax. It's just as simple as that. Governments extract precious resources and move them around in politicized fashion. President Biden was in Kentucky yesterday politicking about government waste. And so it, by definition, slows down economic growth. And people say, well, we need roads and everything. I was just down in Orlando at Disney. They built the roads for themselves. The notion that we wouldn't have roads without government is laughable. There's always an incentive to connect people to businesses. And I just think we've got to remember that as the economy evolves, what we need is going to evolve too, and this includes different kinds of airports that will probably reflect the needs of people that are changing all the time. When government spends on infrastructure, it's every bit the conceit as when it spends on poverty programs and other things.
China is walking back its hardline COVIDian policies a bit, and this has drawn the ire of one Zeke Emanuel. We love the Emanuel family here in Chicago. Dr. Zeke, you'll recall, famously in the spring of 2020, he was, well ahead of the learning curve. I mean, he called for a year and a half lockdown of our economy right out of the gate. So he was, as I said, more enlightened than those who wanted to lock down and then wait and see and pretend that they were going to measure their policies based on the efficacy of them. And you take issue with Zeke Emanuel's criticism of the Chi-Coms relaxing their COVID policies.
Yeah, he says that they're doing it dangerously. Too much freedom. Too much freedom is dangerous for people. It was obnoxious when they said it about us, that if we were left to our own devices, we would engage in behavior that would cause us to overrun hospitals with sickness and death. And it's obnoxious about the Chinese. The people are the market. And so free people are not going to just actively go out and get sick and die. We have the gene within us to preserve ourselves. And so when you leave people to their own devices, they show you how to avoid sickness, how to avoid the hospital. And so for Zeke Emanuel to say this, he's saying that government should basically blind the people to how to protect themselves from the virus. When are we going to wake up to this reality?
Well, I mean, the public health professional people would say, well, look, Zeke Emanuel is a doctor. He's an MD, John, and these other doctors, these infectious disease experts and so forth, they have guidance to provide because they're experts in the field and lay people are not. And so we should listen to the experts and we should go where the science and data suggest we go.
It's a fair point. And so he's a doctor. He says that people who, when the virus is spreading, we should stay apart from each other. Lots of Chinese are doing that right now. Lots of Chinese are wearing masks. Lots of them are still sheltering in place. Go around any city in the United States, any airport, you'll see that lots of Americans are still doing that. That may be good advice. It may be not. But what's got to be stressed is that Emmanuel is one person. He may be a brilliant one person, but he can't possibly be smarter than the collective genius of 330 million Americans and over 1 billion Chinese. There's a reason that markets work. It's not that there aren't experts in government. There are. But experts never match up to the collective genius of people combining their knowledge together. That markets work because it's everyone's knowledge together, not just one.
So I guess, it's one of these sort of fundamental questions. What's your default position? Is to trust people to act in their self-interest or to trust the state to provide for everyone's collective interest, right? That's a big question that people need to consider.
A big question, and I think, unfortunately, even libertarians, people we caucus with, missed the boat back in 2020. I never heard Cato Institute once talk against the lockdowns. I never heard Students for Liberty. I never heard lots of libertarians. And so we can't be situationally for freedom. But beyond that, we've got to remember that the people are the marketplace. And so the most offensive arguments for the lockdowns were the original ones. Oh, the hospitals aren't ready for all the sick who will come in, as though we would act foolishly and get sick if left to our own devices, if we weren't locked into our houses. Oh, 2.3 million Americans will die unless they're locked down, as though we would actively go out and find the behavior most conducive to death. Freedom is most crucial when something allegedly threatens the most. And then I would add, if something allegedly threatens, that's when government force is the most superfluous, precisely because people are going to make wise decisions on their own. They're going to protect themselves. Let's not forget that the red states, the states that don't believe in science, by the New York Times' own admission, they were the states where people freely sheltered in place first, freely bought masks and hand sanitizers first, because they were doing it on their own. They did not need to be forced to do this.
They're also the places that people freely chose to move.
That too. Freedom works. It's not some slogan. There's a reason that markets always outperform government decrees, and the reason they do is because the collective knowledge is much better than the knowledge of one or two people. And so in this case, we keep relying on experts, and experts say, if you don't listen to us, there will be a crisis. Well, that's a self-fulfilling prophecy, because once you substitute the knowledge of very few for the collective knowledge of the marketplace, you have a crisis on your hands. We had it in 2020. They did it to the Chinese. Freedom works not because it's a great slogan, but because it's a market.
So in China right now, reportedly, allegedly, there's this new variant that's ripping through China and they're not sharing their information. Do you think if it comes here to America that we're going to go under lockdowns once again?
I'm horrified that we might. I don't think it's going to work again, and that was the other mistake they made. Because they cried wolf so many times, no one's going to trust them again. And in terms of this virus that's ripping through China, That's precisely the point. If something is threatening out there, the Chinese are going to take precautions on their own. No one needs to be forced to avoid sickness. I've got a wife who quite literally hasn't touched a public door handle for all the time I've known her, and I've been married to her for 8 years, almost 9. She always opens with her elbows because she's afraid of germs. I don't know why. It drives me nuts. But people on their own protect themselves.
I'm going to file that in the Why Dan Proft is Single file. I'll put that story in there. So now the one exception to this, as you well know, of the few not having the intelligence of the collective in a market environment, the one exception to that is the Fed, where a few mystics, starting with Jay Powell, have all the knowledge to properly calibrate money supply and interest rates and that sort of thing. How's that going?
Well, it's going in that markets work no matter what. Markets state their case. This notion of 0% interest rates was always a laugh line. There's no such thing as easy money. How about you, the three of us, go to a bank today and talk about how we need money for our software startup? Do you think we could get anything? No. Interest rates are always high for those who are risky. They're always low for those who aren't. And for those who want to pursue super risky businesses as they do out in Silicon Valley, there's no bank that will ever touch you for that. And so the Fed can sit here and search for a purpose and talk about how it's going to help the economy grow. It can do no such thing. Credit and resources go to their highest use, and the Fed can't do anything about it, thank goodness, because if Jay Powell ran the economy, we'd be too poor to be doing this show right now. We'd all be working in ways that we don't want to work.
Now, I have to take issue with a piece you've written recently because you dare to criticize this free market haven that we call home, Illinois. You're critical of a law that was passed by our enlightened class in 2021, the Predatory Loan Prevention Act, which imposed a 36% interest rate cap on all loans made by non-bank and non-credit union financial institutions to individual borrowers. And I'm horrified that you're not on the side of the little guy, the common man, and you would agree to, you would allow usurious interest rates to be imposed on the little guy.
Yes, aren't I awful? I'm
Yes.
bad in that way. But it's certainly true that they imposed this law, and the result was that those most desperate for credit in the near term to basically pay bills and to avoid financial impairment, were obviously locked out of credit markets altogether as a consequence of this. There's no such thing as shortages unless government is involved. And so the result of the Illinois law was that there were shortages for those most in need of credit. And also it proved kind of a red line racist law. Who was hurt most by it? Poor black people. They were shut out of the credit markets the most by virtue of the imposition of this terrible law.
I love Econ 101 lessons. John Tamny, modern day Henry Hazlitt, editor of RealClearMarkets.com, director of the Center of Economic Freedom at FreedomWorks, author of The Money Confusion, How Illiteracy About Currency and Inflation Sets the Stage for the Crypto Revolution. John, thanks as always. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
If you're talking about it, Dan and Amy are talking about it. It's Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Hi, it's Amy, and MyPillow is excited to bring you their biggest bedding sale ever, just in time for Christmas. Get the Giza Dream bed sheets for as low as $29.98 and a set of pillowcases for only $9.98. Rejuvenate your bed with a MyPillow mattress topper for as low as $99.99. They also have blankets in a variety of sizes, colors, and styles. They even have blankets for your pets. Get duvets, quilts, down comforters, body pillows, bolster pillows, and so much more, all with the biggest discounts ever. MyPillow is also extending their money-back guarantee for Christmas until March 1st, 2023, making them the perfect gifts for your friends, your family, and everyone you know. Go to MyPillow.com and use promo code AMY or call 800-489-0201, and you'll get huge discounts on all MyPillow bedding products, including the Giza Dream bed sheets for as low as $29.98. Get all your shopping done while quantities last. Again, use promo code AMY, A-M-Y, for the best possible discounts.
If you are 65 or older, You know this. Watching your hard-earned dollars fly out the window on healthcare costs is so frustrating. But here's some great news. If you missed the December 7th deadline for open enrollment, it's